and welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, I'd like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children. Winella woke up bright and early on the third day. She was excited and popped right out of bed. Today was the day, her last day of wand school. She would learn how to fly, and she would graduate and get to keep her wand and know how to use it. She got her wand out and tried using it to float down the stairs, but she couldn't quite get the trick to flying like she had yesterday when she had to go rescue Claire from the dragon. Instead, she slid down the stairs as she usually did and walked into the kitchen. "Good morning, Mommy." "Good morning, Winella. What's for breakfast?" "What would you like for breakfast?" "I think I'd like French toast this morning. Do we have any French toast?" Let me look. We have bread, we have eggs. So yes, will you get the grill from downstairs? Winella said, "Sure." She stood at the top of the stairs, and she pointed her wand down the stairs, and she said, "Grill, come to me." And the wand sparkled, and the grill floated off the shelf and up the stairs and into her arms. She took it over and put it on the kitchen island, and to get to the kitchen island, she had to wade across the water that was around the island. Because
across the water?
Well, yes, the island in Winella's kitchen is really an island. It's surrounded by water. So.
What? Oh, cool.
So, she took the grill over there, and she waded back across. She got the eggs and the toast out for her mommy, and her mommy started making French toast on the grill. Winella got the syrup out, and she had a delicious breakfast of French toast with a glass of orange juice and a glass of milk. As soon as she was done, her mommy looked at her watch and said, "Oh, Winella, it's almost 8 o'clock. It's time for you to go to wand school." Winella said, "Oh, I'm going to go upstairs and get my shoes on." So she ran upstairs, she got her shoes on, she brushed her teeth. Then she got out her wand again, she closed her eyes, and she pictured the wand school, like she was right there in front of it. And the wand grew brighter and brighter and brighter until she had to close her eyes. And then she opened them, and there she was. She was standing on the wide green lawn of smooth grass. And up on the hill, there was the white castle with the cross and the phoenix and the dragon. Winella could see the side wall from where she was standing and could see that the damage that the dragon had done the day before was already repaired. She waited around for a minute to see if Claire would arrive. But when Claire did not arrive, Winella looked at her watch and saw that she was about to be late. So she went up, crossed the drawbridge, and knocked on the door. The fairy opened the door and said, "Well, hello, Winella. It's good to see you. Congratulations on making it to the last day of wand school." Winella said, "Thank you. Is Claire already here?" The fairy shook her head and said, "No, Claire decided not to come back to the last day of wand school. She felt so bad that she had caused the dragon to arrive." And Winella said, "But that's not fair. That was an accident." The fairy shrugged and said, "Well, we cannot make her come if she does not want to come." Winella said, "Well, I don't feel right finishing wand school without my friend. Maybe I should go see her." The fairy shrugged and said, "Do you know where she lives?" Winella said, "Well, no." The fairy shook her head and then said, "Well, then you cannot use your wand to get there." Winella said, "Can I have some time? Can I still finish my day at wand school my last day of wand school if I go now?" The fairy frowned and said, "Well, usually it takes a whole day to learn how to fly, but since you've already done it once, I will give you 2 hours. If you are not back in 2 hours, you may not complete wand school." Winella said, "Okay." She immediately raised her wand and thought of home. The wand grew brighter and brighter and brighter, and then there she was in her own house. Winella said, her mommy said, "Back already, Winella? That was fast." Winella said, "I've got to go help a friend, Mom." And her mom smiled and said, "That's my girl." Winella dashed out into the backyard. She knew that she could not get there with Joey or with her wand because she did not know where Claire's home was.
Catspaw Highway.
But as she raced into the backyard, she knew that was one way that she thought could probably get her there. She jumped onto the Catspaw Highway and turned around 3 times, saying, "Catspaw Highway, Catspaw Highway, Catspaw Highway, take me where I want to go." And as she said it, she was thinking of Claire and what Claire looked like. And then she felt herself going very fast. And then she found herself standing on a little bit of the wall. And she suddenly stuck out her arms to balance. She felt dizzy. She was way up in the air. The Catspaw Highway had ended on a cloud. Now, from what Winella knew of clouds, they were made out of just water vapor. You couldn't stand on them. But it seemed to be supporting the Catspaw Highway well enough. So Winella gradually got down on her hands and knees. She held onto the wall tightly with her arms, and she put her feet down onto the cloud. Much to her surprise, she found that she could stand on the cloud. She thought, this must be a very different sort of cloud. She looked around. She could see that it was a very large cloud, and off in the distance there seemed to be mounds of cloud reaching up that almost looked like houses. She began to walk towards them. As she got closer, she could see various children and people who were running in and out of houses and running around and playing. Winella stopped the first little girl that she could see. She said, "Excuse me, do you know where someone named Claire lives?" The girl giggled and said, "Everybody knows where Princess Claire lives, silly. She lives in the palace." Winella said, "Oh, thank you." She looked around.
Princess!
She didn't really see anything that looked like a palace, but then she noticed that one of the mounds in the cloud that the people were walking in and out of was much larger than the others. She thought, maybe that's what a cloud palace looks like. So she walked over. As she got closer, she could see that there were guards on the outside of the palace. She said, "Excuse me, I'm here to see Princess Claire." The guard said, "I'm afraid Princess Claire is not taking visitors today." "Oh, I'm not a visitor. I'm her friend, Winella." The guard said, "Well, I'll check." He disappeared inside the palace and was gone for what seemed like a very long time. Winella looked at her watch. 20 minutes out of her 2 hours had already gone by. By the time the guard got back, her watch hand had gone another 10 whole minutes, and a half hour of her 2 hours was gone. The guard said, "Princess Claire said she will see you. Go up the stairs, take the first right, and then go to the end of the hallway. It's the last door on your left." Winella followed the directions. She walked inside. She was surprised at how light the cloud castle was on the inside. She saw stairs ahead of her. It was really more like a ramp made out of cloud. She had no trouble climbing up.
A cloud was made of a castle.
A castle.
And that was the castle where Claire lives. That's cool.
I'm glad you like it. Winella climbed up the cloud staircase until she reached the second floor. She turned right and began to walk down the hallway. There was a very last door on the left, but it was closed. Winella walked up to it and tried to knock, but found that the door was too soft. She couldn't knock on it. It didn't make any sound. And so she stood outside and said, "Claire, are you in there? It's me, Winella." Claire said, "Winella, why aren't you at wand school?" Winella said, "That's what I came here to ask you. Why aren't you at wand school? I don't want to do my last day without you." Claire said, "I ruined everything. Just go away and finish." Winella pushed gently on the cloud door, and instead of opening, the clouds just faded into water vapor, and suddenly she could see right through the door and walk right through it. Claire was laying on a big bed made out of cloud and still had her pajamas on. Winella said, "So you're a princess and you live on a cloud? How cool is that?" Claire said, "Yeah, I'm lucky." Winella said, "I wish you'd told me. I'm definitely coming to visit you." Claire frowned a little bit. She said, "How did you get here? You don't know where I live." Winella just smiled and said, "Well, I guess we both have our little secrets. I'm a busy girl. I get around. Claire smiled and said, okay, fair enough. But I really don't want to go back to wand school, Winella. It was so embarrassing what happened with the wish I made in the dragon and how I wrecked the castle. Winella said, don't worry about it, Claire. They've already fixed the castle. You think it took the fairy more than 5 seconds to fix that whole thing using her wand? I think it was just another way they were testing us. And Claire said, well, then I think I failed the test. I don't think I deserve to have a magic wand. Winella said, oh, Claire, you are so nice, and I would have never been able to go through wand school without you. I would have been so lonely, and I just don't want to learn to fly without you. Besides, flying must be easy for you, and how much fun would it be to be able to fly when you're on a cloud? How do you get back to the ground right now? Claire smiled and said, we have cloud cars. Winella said, wow, you'll have to show me those, but right now, she looked at her watch. A full hour had gone by. She said, right now, we have to get back to cloud school. I only have another...
Wow.
I'm sorry, back to wand school. I only have another hour, and then I won't be able to finish wand school either. Claire said, but I'm just too embarrassed, Winella. Winella said, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Come on. You're my friend, and I'm your friend, and friends stick together, and I need you to come and learn to fly with me. Claire thought about it for a minute, and then gave a little smile. Winella held out her hand and said, come on. Claire said, okay, I'll come. Winella said, well then get out of bed and get dressed. We've only got 45 minutes left. Claire dashed out of bed. She opened a big dresser made out of cloud. There inside were her clothes. She said, I gotta go shower. Winella said, okay. She walked with Claire down the hall to the bathroom. The shower didn't have a shower spigot like our showers have. Instead, at the top of the shower was a much darker rain cloud. When Claire got in the shower, the cloud got even darker. It even made a slightest little thunder sound, and then it began to rain all over Claire. Claire washed herself while Winella waited outside. Winella looked at her watch. They only had a half hour left to get back to wand school. Claire came out. Winella said, have you had breakfast? Claire said, I really didn't have much of an appetite. Winella said, well, you can't learn to fly on an empty stomach. Come on, don't you have a servant around here or something? Claire said, well, yeah, I guess so. Winella said, well, come on, do something princessy. Get him to bring you some food. So Claire said, excuse me. A servant stopped. She said, could I have some breakfast, please? The servant said, I'll be right back, Madam Princess. He was indeed back, only 5 minutes later, carrying a plate that had some scrambled eggs on it, which was Claire's favorite, and some granola, which was also Claire's favorite. Claire ate and drank, and Winella looked at her watch. Come on, she said, we've only got 10 minutes. Get out your wand. Claire said, my wand? I left my wand at wand school. Winella said, at wand school? How are we supposed to get back if you don't have your wand? Claire said, I don't know. I wasn't planning on going back. Winella said, this is terrible. She said, where did you leave it? Claire told her that she had left it in the mailbox just outside the front of the castle. Winella said, don't move, I'll be right back. She closed her eyes and thought of the spot in front of the castle. The wand glowed, and Winella opened her eyes, standing in front of the mailbox. She looked at her watch. 8 minutes left. She opened the mailbox. There was nothing in it. Oh, no, Winella said, what am I going to do? She ran towards the door and then noticed that there was a second mailbox on the other side of the door. She ran to it. There inside was Claire's wand. Winella grabbed it, stuck it in her pocket, and closed her eyes. She thought of the cloud castle and the stairwell that she and Claire had been standing at the top of. Her wand began to glow, and she opened her eyes standing on top of the stairs. She looked at her watch. 5 minutes left. Here, Claire. She handed her her wand. They both closed their eyes and thought of wand school, and found themselves standing on the great green lawn in front of the castle. Winella looked at her watch. 3 minutes left. They dashed up the grass to the castle and knocked on the door. The fairy opened the door and said, oh, good. You've both come back. I was so afraid that you wouldn't be able to. She said, now come in. It's time to learn to fly. The fairy smiled. Part of the last test of the last day of wand school is simply whether you can stick it out and know what is most important. And I think that both of you girls have demonstrated today that you know what is most important. You have stuck with your friends, even when it meant that you might not be able to continue in wand school. Learning to fly is the easiest part of having a wand. She said, do you know how you've each been thinking all this week in order to get back to the castle? The girls nodded. She said, well, simply think of the same thing, except instead of thinking of going someplace, think of flying there. Winella and Claire smiled at each other. They each fixed in their mind a place. The fairy smiled at them and said, now here is your final test. See the tallest tower in the castle? I will be waiting there for you. When there is no stairs to get to the top of the tower. When you arrive there, I will have your wand diploma waiting for you that says that you are a graduate of wand school and an authorized user of a magic wand. Winella and Claire smiled at each other. They thought of the top of the tower, and they thought of how it would feel to fly there. And when they looked down, they saw that their feet had left the ground, and they were floating up through the air towards the top of the tower. Winella grinned, pointed her wand at the top of the tower, and thought, faster! And she immediately began to float ahead of Claire. Claire smiled and thought, faster yet! And she started to catch up with Winella. And she did catch her right at the top of the tower, where they both floated down to land gracefully in front of the fairy. The fairy smiled, handed them each a scroll, and said, congratulations, graduates. You are now diplomates of wand school. And she curtsied to them both. They both curtsied back and then gave each other big hugs. Winella said, will you come over to my house and play sometime soon, Claire? Claire said, well, yes, but I don't know how to get there. Winella said, I'll come and I will show you how to get to my house. Just wait until you meet Sarah May Figment. Claire said, who's Sarah May Figment? Winella smiled as she said, you'll see soon enough.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and clever commentary were supplied by my children. The intro and outro music is by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Our email is storiesforwonderfulchildren@gmail.com, and you can also find us on Facebook or Twitter. I'm Dan Windeland, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.